Hi folks, we hope you'll enjoy the upcoming answers to this hot question. I am Buzz Aldrin, engineer, American astronaut, and the second person to walk on the moon during the Apollo 11 moon landing. AmA. Hello Mr. Aldrin. Our nation and our world have been waiting for another monumental achievement by humanity ever since you were a pioneer in the space race and set foot on the moon. For lack of any serious government effort, I'm rooting for Elon Musk to accomplish this by sending man to Mars. What advice would you give Elon to achieve the ultimate objective of permanence on Mars? How tempting was it to lay in the moon dust and make moon angels? That was not at all tempting. I wanted my white spacesuit to remain as clean as possible. Do you know how expensive it is to do laundry in space? Is there any experience on Earth that even compares slightly to having been on the moon? My first words of my impression of being on the surface of the moon that just came to my mind was magnificent desolation. The magnificence of human beings, humanity, planet Earth, maturing the technologies, imagination and courage to expand our capabilities beyond the next ocean, to dream about being on the moon, and then taking advantage of increases in technology and carrying out that dream, achieving that is magnificent testimony to humanity. But it is also desolate. There is no place on Earth as desolate as what I was viewing in those first moments on the lunar surface. Because I realized what I was looking at, towards the horizon and in every direction, had not changed in hundreds, thousands of years. Beyond me I could see the moon curving away, no atmosphere, black sky. Cold. Colder than anyone could experience on Earth when the sun is up, but when the sun is up for 14 days, it gets very, very hot. No sign of life whatsoever. That is desolate. More desolate than any place on Earth. Do the pictures of space do any justice to the real thing? Yes, they do. They recall, for me, the actual experience of myself in space, not by words, not by print, but visual reminders. It brings back a very in-depth appreciation. They can be used very well for communicating in speeches, talks, and more to other people who can actually see what I saw and what the camera saw. Phew. Looks like I'm not missing out by not going to space, then. Colonel Aldrin, what went through your head when you first looked back and saw the Earth from space? Where are the billions and billions and billions of people, on what I'm looking at? We're the only three that are not back there. And we didn't get to celebrate. Because we were out of town. That's what's the most awe-inspiring to me about this whole concept. Of all the 6 or 7 billion people, only 3 at a time weren't on Earth. 3. And it's the same with a possible mission to Mars. Those people will be the only people, however few or many, who are not on Earth. And as a human, being on Earth is pretty much the one thing that is a given. How were the cast and crew of 30 Rock? Anything memorable you can share? Well, 30 Rock means 30 Rockefeller Plaza. My father, in 1925, 1926, in the Reserve of the Air Corps, worked as aviation fuel manager for Standard Oil of New Jersey. That's where I lived at that time, and he would go into NYC and work at 30 Rockefeller Plaza. So when I was asked to consider participating, I jumped for joy, and I can't remember a more pleasant episode of discussions with Tina Fey as we talked about her fictitious mother's, I think it was, love affair that she had with me, Buzz Aldrin. And then we looked at the moon, and we both sort of cursed at it for various reasons and said, I'll never forget the line, I walked on your face. Hello Mr. Aldrin. Is there anything you regret not getting to do while in space? On the Gemini mission in space, on my doctoral thesis at MIT, those techniques were used by Gemini, Apollo and even the Space Shuttle. But I was very disappointed when it looked like I wouldn't even have a chance to fly in the 2-man Gemini program. I was not scheduled to be anything other than the backup crew. A tragedy changed that, and I was a backup pilot on Gemini 9, and then I would be on the primary crew for Gemini 12, the final mission. The #1 Air Force experiment was on Gemini 9 and 12, but its use was unsuccessful on Gemini 9, and so I became the first astronaut to train underwater in neutral buoyancy. I had been a scuba diver 10 years earlier, and knew that training underwater would be very, very effective, and I felt very confident of carrying out the difficult procedures to be able to free maneuver outside the spacecraft with the equipment. This is what George Clooney's character was doing with the jetpack in Gravity. Unfortunately, NASA cancelled that experiment. Mr. Aldrin, do you watch movies about people going to space? If so, which one is your favorite? I have watched many movies from Martians coming to Earth in New Jersey in the form of giant snakes. This was a radio program created by Orson Welles, War of the Worlds, and I've read many science fiction stories, descriptions, by Isaac Asimov, but my favorite of course is Arthur C. Clarke. So 2001, A Space Odyssey. And then later on, I managed to arrange a cruise ship departing from Sri Lanka where Clarke lived, and I was able to stay with him, talking about many, many things in the past. I wrote a book along with Neil Armstrong and Michael Collins, called First on the Moon, and the epilogue was written by Arthur C. Clarke. When I wrote my book of science fiction, Arthur C. Clarke wrote a one-page foreword that was outstanding, absolutely, as he praised our ingenuity and imagination. And when we visited, we talked about a treasure he had discovered in the ocean, and we both hoped in the future that he and I could scuba dive and perhaps retrieve some of that treasure. That never happened, unfortunately. Thank you for doing the AMA. Ever find time for computer games like Kerbal Space Program? I've gotten 3 kids more interested in math and science after showing it to them. Have a fantastic day. I have inspired my own video games, 10, 20, 30 years ago, and now there is in Europe a video challenge, a video activity, entitled Buzz Aldrin's Space Program Manager. And their game players can build their own space program from the beginning, and from where we are now on into the future, with some of the components that I believe will make great progress in our transportation systems between the Earth and the Moon and Mars in a long-standing reusable way into the future. I'll have to check out Kerbal Space Program. Hi Mr. Aldrin, thank you for joining us. One of my heroes is Carl Sagan, and, as far as I have read, he worked with NASA during the Apollo missions, so did you ever get to meet him, and if so, what were your impression of Carl Sagan? Yes, I did. I met Carl Sagan and his wife. Both were very dedicated people to explaining to young people and to all people the benefits to be derived from space, the history of how our universe was formed, and the history of the advancement of the technologies that hundreds of years ago enabled present-day nations to use them to begin to add more science discoveries in space. And to write stories and television series that reach many people. And after his passing away, you have a rejuvenation of the series Cosmos, featuring a very good friend of mine, Neil deGrasse Tyson. We were on a commission together to look at the future of space activities for the United States. That was about 12 years ago, and we've been good friends ever since. I was on his TV show. He did Michael Jackson's Moonwalk far better than I did on Dancing with the Stars. Humanity will be the first landing by an Earthling, a human being, on the planet Mars. And I expect that within 2 decades of the 5th anniversary of the first landing on the Moon, that within 2 decades America will lead an international presence on planet Mars. Some people may be rooting for Elon. I think he could, with his SpaceX, contribute considerably, enormously, to an international activity not only at the Moon but also on Mars. I have considered whether a landing on Mars could be done by the private sector. It conflicts with my very strong idea, concept, conviction, that the first human beings to land on Mars should not come back to Earth. They should be the beginning of a buildup of a colony, settlement. I call it a permanence. A settlement you can visit once or twice, come back, and then decide you want to settle. Same with a colony. But you want it to be permanent from the get-go, from the very first. I know that many people don't feel that that should be done. Some people even consider it distinctly a suicide mission. Not me. Not at all. Because we will plan, we will construct from the Moon of Mars, over a period of 6 to 7 years, the landing of different objects at the landing site that will be brought together to form a complete Mars habitat and laboratory, similar to what has been done at the Moon. Tourism trips to Mars and back are just not the appropriate way for human beings from Earth to have an individual company, no matter how smart, send people to Mars and bring them back. It is very, very expensive. It delays the obtaining of permanence, internationally. Your question referred to a monumental achievement by humanity, that should not be one private company. What would have been your answer or question? Leave it in the comments below. Slap that like and subscribe button for more, and check out the link in the video description for even more answers. Peace out, and catch you in the next video.